All right, welcome to the Maine State Senate Candidate Forum for Districts 23 and 24. Was sponsored by or presented by the Chamber. I want to thank all of our Senate candidates for joining us today. My name is Cory King. I am the Executive Director. I am also the moderator and will be running the waiting room. For those that have joined us to listen in, thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And for those that submitted questions, thank you so much for doing that. I just want to go over some ground rules. This is going to be, much more of a conversation where we're going to get everyone's opinions on several things, and we're going to give a chance for you to meet the candidate. So how this is going to work is, in just a second, we are going to have opening statements from each candidate. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to introduce themselves to you. And at the end, we'll have 2 minutes at the end for closing statements by each candidate. And in between, we're going to tackle as many questions as we can. Each candidate will have 1.5 minutes to answer the question, and we'll go around in succession. And then I will open the floor to anybody who wants 30 seconds to say anything more on that subject before moving on to the next issue. I do want to thank our sponsors. The Chamber's Cornerstone members are sponsoring this event. But thank you to Mid-Coast Parkview Health, Priority Real Estate Group, Barnard Financial, Remax Riverside, Bath Savings, Riley Insurance, and Sightlines. With all that being said, the Chamber does not endorse any candidates, and those businesses' participation in the series is no way of any candidate either. So with that, I would like to say welcome to our candidates. Thanks for joining us today. And we are going to start. I pulled some names out of a hat earlier, and so we're first going to get our first opening statement from Holly Kopp, who is running for District 23. Holly.
Great, thank you, Cory, and thank you to the Southern Mid-Coast Chamber for providing this opportunity. I know the challenges of us meeting folks during COVID, so I do appreciate this. A little bit about myself. I've lived in Maine my entire life, grew up in Bucksport. I'm a graduate of UMaine for an undergrad degree, and my graduate degree is from USM in school psychology. While I've had a career and have been dedicated to the field of education, my family has a history of business ownership. My husband and I currently own CertaPro Painters of Maine, which is a franchise. We certainly know firsthand the challenges of running a business during economic downturns. It requires creativity and flexibility and oftentimes diversification. And I applaud our small business owners for their adaptability in keeping people employed and providing goods and services safely during this pandemic. I also understand the huge responsibility of employing in our prior businesses, sometimes close to 100 people. And it's a lot of responsibility to feel that you're supporting people's, not just individuals, but important network of support for their family and provision of healthcare and training. Some of our prior background was in manufacturing, and that's where my passion for career and technical education really comes in. I know that a lot of industries do not have the pipeline for education to support the labor force, and I will talk about that more specifically, I think, later today. But briefly, I'm running for state senate because I believe in public service. I've been in public service for over 10 years. And I feel that now is a time to restore some balance in our government. I want a state that attracts job growth and supports small businesses, and not a state that deters our young people from moving here because of high taxes, high utility costs, and poor infrastructure. So I will look forward to touching on some of those concepts later. And again, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Holly. Eloise Vitelli, you are up next. Your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you, Cory, for doing this. It's a pleasure to be here virtually with my fellow candidates and those who are listening in. I'm running for re-election because I want to make sure that Maine is a place where everyone has the opportunity to lead a healthy, productive life. But I first want to acknowledge that these past 6 months have been very challenging for all of us, and especially difficult for those who've lost loved ones, those who are ill and recovering, and all of our frontline healthcare workers who face the virus every day. I also want to recognize the sacrifices that all of us have been making, whether it's a loss of our livelihoods, just time with classmates, friends, and family, and the disruptions to our daily routines as we adjust to social distancing. And while Maine has done well in balancing economic activity with safety, we're not out of the woods. The road ahead remains uncharted, and tough decisions will have to be made, requiring good judgment and collaborative leadership and an ability to see new opportunities. I must say I've also been inspired by the compassion, creativity, and courage Maine people have shown, and want to especially shout out to our small business owners, teachers, students, and our young people who've led the way in responding to this challenge. I believe I have the background and the experience to take on these challenges. For nearly 40 years, I helped run an organization statewide whose mission is to guide individuals towards economic security by going back to school, finding a good job, or starting their own small business. We offered programs that give people the tools to manage their money, to set goals and save for their future. Hands-on programs so that young high school girls can see and feel what it might be like to be a carpenter or an electrician or to drive a backhoe, enlarging their possibilities through trade and technical careers. Along with my colleagues, I work to promote entrepreneurship and to connect Main Street businesses to each other and to resources to help them succeed. As a legislator, I've drawn on all this experience, my broad knowledge of the Maine economy, my ability to work well with others and form partnerships, my understanding of career pathways, what it takes to support the hopes and the aspirations of individuals, and how to see beyond the roadblocks to the possibilities that lie ahead. I'm proud of my legislative accomplishments in addressing real problems for real people, working to reduce the cost of medication, advancing clean, renewable energy, and the Student Loan Bill of Rights. I also led the way to increasing the state earned income tax credit by 3 times and making it refundable, putting cash back in the pockets of hardworking Maine people so that they can pay their bills and buy needed goods and pay for their education. Since the pandemic came to our state, I've been working every day to help our constituents, and I look forward to continuing this service in the next session. Thank you.
Eloise, thank you. Thank you very much for that. And thank you, Holly. I think I thanked you before, but in case I didn't, thank you for your opening statement as well. So those are the Senate District 23 candidates. And now we have Senate District 24, which is Mattie. We're going to start with Mattie, and then we're going to go to Brad. Oh gosh. Oh, I muted you. Oh.
Thank you, Cory.
Sorry.
No, joy of technology. Thank you, Cory, and thank you to everyone at the Southern Mid-Coast Maine Chamber for putting this forum on today. I am Representative Mattie Daughtry. I represent currently about half of Brunswick. I was born and raised here in Brunswick. I'm a graduate of Brunswick High School. I went away to college at Smith College and then was very blessed and fortunate to be able to move home. I first ran for office when I was 25. It's not something I thought I'd be doing, but I realized so much was at stake, not only for my own generation, but for the state that, I grew up in and has really contributed so much to who I am. So I, jumped in the ring, ran when I was 25, and it was one of the best decisions I've ever made. During my terms in the legislature, I served 3 terms on the Joint Standing Committee on Education and Cultural Affairs, where I've worked on everything from expanding affordable preschool options and childcare to really, making major steps to combat the student debt crisis. This past session, I was lucky enough to help be a part of creating a new committee and was the House Chair of the Innovation, Development, Economic Advancement, and Business Committee, otherwise known as the IDEA Committee, where we're really trying to take a look at how do we break down the different silos within state government and take a really meaningful look at what our skills gaps are and what we can do to make sure that Maine and our workforce are ready for a 21st century economy, something that's increasingly important as we're looking at what we're facing after the pandemic. Outside of the legislature, I'm actually the co-owner of a small business here in Brunswick, Maine. My other life, I am a brewer of Moderation Brewing right here on Main Street. So I know every day what it's like to make those decisions to make sure that your doors can stay open and that your product can still get out every single day, no matter what the obstacles are. About running for office, I first announced in January. There are a plethora of issues that really got me to put my name in the ring, whether it's making real meaningful impact on the climate crisis, making sure that young Mainers can afford to live, work, and play here, and that our seniors can also live in place and age gracefully here. And also we have a lot of work to do on making sure that we have an equitable state and equitable institutions for everyone. Now, that's all still very important to me, but what's become inherently clear is that the pandemic is going to be shifting everything. We have seen what this has done not only on a national level, but on a state level. Maine's had a great response, but we're facing one of the biggest budget shortfalls that we've ever seen. And what's clear is we're gonna need people who can think on their feet. My professional and personal track record show that I'm a compassionate, empathetic, and proven leader. I'll be able to hit the ground running in January, and I'll be ready to make those decisions. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today, and thank you so much, Cory.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mattie. And then we have Brad Pattershall, our other candidate for Senate District 24. Brad, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Cory. Thank you for having us. We really appreciate the opportunity. Yes, I'm Brad Pattershall. I'm the Republican candidate for Senate District 24, which includes Brunswick, Freeport, Harpswell, North Yarmouth, and Pownal. I am a lifelong Mainer like the other panelists here. I was born in Farmington, Maine. I lived in Winthrop, Maine, outside Augusta until I was 8 years old. And then my parents split up and we moved down to Cape Elizabeth, my younger brother and my mom. And I went to school in Cape Elizabeth through high school. I'm a graduate of Colby College with an economics degree. After working for 2 years in the construction field, I enrolled and was accepted at the University of Maine School of Law in Portland. I earned my Juris Doctor with honors in 1999. As an undergraduate, I spent a year over in Scotland, which was a wonderful experience. And in law school, I spent a semester in France where all my law school classes were taught in French. So I still use that language with especially my Quebecois clients, but this year's been a little bit down, but it's been good for business. So I've been a lawyer since 1999. I was a partner at a firm in downtown Portland for 7 years after working as an associate for 7 years. In the year 2014, I struck out on my own and started my own practice here in Brunswick. And I've been running the law office of Bradford A. Pattershall LLC since then. I live in Freeport, Maine with my wife, Sharon. She's a middle school teacher. And I have 2 daughters, aged 10 and 13, who are in school in the Freeport school system, which is part of RSU 5. The reason I wanted to get involved in running for office, which is something I've never done before, is that back in January, I just thought the tone and the incivility that was going on was intolerable. And I thought of all the professions where you advocate and fight and you do it in a civil manner, it's the one I've been in all my life since I graduated law school. We advocate, we fight, but you use your logic and your persuasion and your words and your writing and your ideas to try to persuade a jury or a judge that you're in the right. And you do it with civility towards your opposing counsel, and you try to get your client where he or she wants to go. And I thought, boy, this would be something I'd like to do. I want to be an advocate, or essentially a lawyer for my constituents. I want to listen to what their problems are, and I want to try to go to Augusta and help solve the problem. And in the meantime, I'm going to do it without demeaning anybody that's of an opposing viewpoint, and I'm going to try to work with them as best as I can to get there. Mattie and I don't really know each other except on these video conferences, but our limited communication shows that she and I are both devoted to that civility. And we may disagree on some stuff, but we're not going to be like what you see on the national news every single day. And I think just for starters, that's the way that things should be. And so that's what I'm committed to. I'm going to have different ideas, different approaches. I'm not going to say the other ideas are bad or stupid. I'm going to advocate for what I think is right, for what my constituents think is right, but we're going to do it in a civil way. And that's why I got involved.
Awesome. Hey, Brad, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you all for the opening statements. Those are never easy to keep to a time limit, and you all did pretty well. So like I said before to you in an email we discussed before, I don't really want to harp too much on the time thing, but if you guys do start running over, I am gonna pop in with just a little bit 10-second warning or something like that. But I also want you to be able to get your ideas out. So I'm going to try to judge to see if it sounds like you're wrapping up your point and give you a little time without interrupting if I possibly can. So with that, we've got about a half hour here to go over some questions that got submitted earlier. And so the first one we're going to start with is something that all of you referenced. Holly, we're going to begin with you. We're going to go in the same order. And then for the second question, Eloise, you'll go first. That's how we'll continue through. So career and technical education. Region 10 Technical High School is our region's career and technical high school. Students attend part-time, typically in their junior and senior year of high school. What are your thoughts on Region 10's vision to become a 4-year technical high school located at Brunswick Landing to support our businesses and our industry who are in a critical need for skilled workers? Holly?
Yeah, I'm absolutely 100% for that. I've been advocating, and I know some work has undergone at our middle school here to help expose our students as young as middle school that these are great career options. I would love to see the barriers broken down that our students currently face to achieve the certifications in career and technical education, specifically scheduling, transportation. Right now, Voc 10 services 3 different districts, which all in itself has a lot of challenges. More specifically, I think that we need to make sure we're investing in career and technical education now. I was very disappointed to see significant cuts in the governor's budget that really derailed that effort to move towards a comprehensive school. I believe students should have the opportunity to receive their academic certifications or requirements for a diploma, as well as receive a certificate that allows them to move into an apprentice position or further their career if they want to start working when they're done with high school and they have that diploma. Not everybody wants to go to a 4-year college, and that should be okay. And there's a lot of stigma around that. And the first part of that is to start, I think, having a campaign that supports career and technical education. And at some point, I would like to, when climate change comes up, I really want to talk about the importance of career and technical education, particularly at the secondary level, in providing these opportunities specifically in renewable energy. Because if we want to tackle climate change, we absolutely need to be tackling the workforce issue that we have in that area.
Thank
And
you,
I don't know
Holly.
what my time is, but I'll
No, that's okay. That's okay.
I'll cut myself off there. I'm not looking at a watch. But,
It's okay.
I could talk for a very long time on this topic.
It's okay. You'll hear me pop in.
Okay.
Eloise, same question. Region 10 High School.
Yes.
Looking at a 4-year career and technical education. Go for it. Floor is yours.
Well, thank you for that, and thank you for the question. And Holly, I appreciate your support for this issue. It's something that I've talked to constituents about for years, the need to expand opportunities for career and technical education at the high school level. As I mentioned in my opening comments, the organization that I worked for, it's not a secret, New Ventures Maine, has been running programs called Totally Trades for, I think it's at least 10 years now, towards this very goal, I think, that we're talking about here, which is to broaden the pool of people who will seriously look at the opportunities in career and technical fields as they make decisions for their education at the high school level as well as beyond that. These are hands-on, day-long programs. They're still trying to do them virtually now. It's a little bit of a challenge. But the idea is to give girls particularly a sense of what the possibilities are for other kinds of work. You know, the world of work has changed a lot in the last 10, 20 years, certainly over the time that I've been involved in workforce development. And we have swung more towards one direction of trying to incorporate education into everybody's life, but that's taken the form more often than it might of a 2 or 4 year college education. Whereas what we're seeing in the workforce is that there are job opportunities and skill requirements that employers have and industries have that don't necessarily require a bachelor's degree in whatever. So there is a need to put more emphasis on how we get our young people and even our returning adults into some of these other fields. And I also would support the conversation about moving people into green jobs in the coming years. So.
All right, I promise we will get there. Eloise, thank you very much. Mattie, I'm gonna try to unmute you. I know you've got construction outside your office right now, so that makes it hard, but there we go. Mattie, floor, same question. I think you know it, but if you need it again, let me know. If not, fire away.
So I absolutely support and love that idea of having a 4-year career and technical education center on the landing. I have been advocating for CTE education for my entire 8 years of my legislature and legislative service. And honestly, I think it's something that I've cared about since I was in high school. And I remember looking at wanting to be able to take classes at Region 10 and there being a multitude of barriers depending on what academic track and what schedule you're on. And also which school you're at. You know, Holly mentioned transportation. It's a huge issue. We also have an aging infrastructure with our career technical education schools. So we really need to be looking at investing in them at a larger level. I know this is something my colleague, Representative Ryan Fecto and I were really passionate about looking at trying to get a bond passed because one of the barriers financially is a lot of the equipment that these schools are using. Pretty, you know, high ticket items, and making sure that we're able to partner with our different CTE centers to be able to make sure that they have the cutting edge technology. We really need to pass a bond to really be able to move these schools forward. So I'd love to pursue that idea further. Also, in my other work, I serve as the policy chair for the New England Board of Higher Education, and I also created a college affordability and completion commission that we did our work 6 years ago looking at how people can get post-secondary training. And this doesn't mean a 4-year degree. And a key part of that is making sure that our CTE centers are supported and have the resources they need. And also that students are aware of the opportunities, that this is something, you know, you can be looking at, you know, a 4-year college degree, but also looking at potentially a certification through your CTE center to sort of couple with both educational tracks. So huge advocate for it. Nancy, thank you for all the work that you're doing. And I'm really excited about that possibility. It's a perfect spot.
Thank you. Thank you, Mattie. And Brad, last word is yours.
Okay, thank you. I echo the others' thoughts. I'm totally in favor of promoting CTE. I think there's a stigma associated with the quote unquote blue collar workers, but the people that go to these schools that get trained are taking care of our most fundamental needs when they graduate. These are the plumbers that fix your sinks and your toilets and your showers. These are the mechanics that fix your car so you can get around. There are people driving trucks. It's all of these things. I mentioned I worked for 2 years after college in the home construction business. I was actually a carpenter, framed houses, and I built them, learned a lot about the trade. I still use my skills that I learned doing that, and I have a tremendous appreciation for people that work in that field. The other benefit is somebody mentioned a little bit about the student debt crisis. People that are going to be tradespeople are not going to have that same type of debt that's going to hamper them. And plus, they're also going to have opportunities coming right out of school to get jobs. I think it's especially important for the young men and women that know that they want to get into those fields right away. I'll be candid. I didn't quite know what I wanted to do when I went off to college. So I took all kinds of different classes. There are some people that say, you know, I want to be a carpenter. I want to follow in my dad's shoes and be the burner repair person. And I'm totally in favor of it and support it. Oh, there's my alarm telling me I got to stop. Sorry.
No, you're good. I muted myself. So yeah, no, it's fine. Technology gone crazy. I don't know. I can't remember if I said this at the beginning or not, but at the end of each question, once everyone answers, I'm just going to say, does anyone want 30 seconds to say anything further on this topic before we move on? And we'll go in the same rotation. Holly, you got 30 seconds.
Sure. I think my concern is, you know, everybody here supports career and technical education, but, you know, we have folks here that also supported a budget that made significant cuts. So that concerns me. And I think that we need to make this a priority in our state, not just for our young people, but to solve some of the economic issues and create some additional pathways for industries that will impact us for years to come. So I really would like to see this, whether I'm elected or not, become something that is paid attention to and money is invested in our state.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Holly. Eloise, 30 seconds.
Yeah, and I just also add to that to say that it was really disappointing. The bond package that included $4 million to fund equipment at the technical colleges was not supported, because that would have gone a long way towards modernizing the equipment that was there. And it was really too bad that we were not able to generate the support across the aisle for that bond.
That's great. Thank you, Eloise. Mattie, 30 seconds.
Just going to add, the budget process is like any good family budget. You know, it comes from a point of compromise. And I will say it is very frustrating, especially working on the education budget. It's one of the second largest budgets in the state government. I've been there late at night, you know, begging appropriations, looking at the state level to really make sure that we take CTE to be a, you know, crucial area of funding. And it is disappointing sometimes, but, you know, we have to be very careful with the budget. And I think it'll be clear moving forward in the next budget, even shorter revenue. This is an area that I think we all agree needs to have crucial funding, whether it's hopefully through passing the bond, but also through increased funding as well.
Brad, final word. You want 30 seconds?
I think the pendulums is starting to swing a little bit because of the student debt crisis and people realizing, especially in the era of COVID, how hard it is to pay your bills. That, you know, having the quote unquote blue collar job is a real alternative now, and I'm in favor of it. I would fight not to limit the funding for it.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad. I will throw in my chamber disclaimer here, which is we have wanted to do some workforce programming that we were going to launch this year. And I talked to many of you on our individual interviews about this. And so this is something that we're also extremely passionate about. And I think the chamber has a network where we can really work together, connecting the schools and the businesses and looking at some of the barriers. So this is wonderful, all wonderful for me to hear. To that same vein, let's move on to our next question. And some of you referred to this and wanted to get back to it, so I want to make sure we have time. So we're going to start with Eloise and talking about climate change. Climate change is a hotly debated topic, both locally, regionally, and at a federal level. There are strong beliefs one way or the other. So first part of the question is, what are your feelings on climate change? With the second part being, there's been an emphasis, especially in the Collins-Gideon race, about green jobs and how that Maine needs to have more of them. So climate change, green jobs, give us your feelings on that. Not a great question.
Great, thank you. So it's a very broad area. Climate change is real, it's happening, and I would say I have sort of two perspectives, or I bring two points of view to the issue of climate change and its impacts on our lives and livelihoods here in Maine. The first is, as my position on the Marine Resources Committee, I've learned from our fishermen directly that they are already facing, and have been for years, the impact of climate change on their businesses, on their industry, whether it's lobstering, clamming. You know, they see the impact of a warming ocean, of greater acidification, and they're struggling to adapt. And a lot of our time on the Marine Resources Committee is about those adaptations. The move towards greater oyster farming, for example, which I'm all in favor of, is in part a response to the lack of jobs, the lack of opportunities in other traditional fisheries, i.e. clams. So that's been a real sort of eye-opener for me, in a way to appreciate directly the impact of climate change on people here in Maine. The other is from the energy perspective, and I've been working for a couple years. Actually, one of the first bills I sponsored when I got to the Senate was a solar study bill, and that sort of laid out, that it was a study that the PUC did, what the benefits and the costs are for moving towards solar. This last session, I was able to get through a bill, LD 1494, I think it was, to update Maine's renewable portfolio standard so that by 2030, we would be reducing our greenhouse gases by 80% and 100% by 2050. The first round of new procurements under that bill has already promised to create 450 new jobs in these green industries on a construction basis, and 30 new jobs going forward through mostly solar and also wind and hydro installations. So I'm committed to moving us in that direction.
So thank you, Eloise. This is a poorly worded question by me, so Eloise took about 2 minutes. So I'm going to give you, 30 extra seconds. So everyone's going to get about 2 minutes. So Mattie, your 2 minutes starts now on climate change and green jobs.
So did you want to go, Eloise, then myself, or were you or were you just?
Oh, we're just going to go.
We're mixing it up. Great.
Yeah, we're going to go in the same order. So we'll go
Thank
Mattie
you.
and then Brad, then Holly. No problem. Mattie, sorry, clean energy.
So first off, I want to say it's not really a climate change issue anymore. It's a climate crisis at this point. So we look around us, all of us, talked about our experiences growing up in Maine. For me, growing up here in Brunswick, I can remember when I was little, my friends and I running through the woods and never having to worry about coming home with a tick. I've watched up on the full day. I've literally seen the green crabs, wreak havoc, not only on our clamming industry, but on the literal banks of my beloved bay. I've watched my own garden and my friends who are farmers now suffer with historical droughts. We have a very limited window to be able to turn this around, and it's absolutely crucial that we take the steps to do so. And I really think Maine is positioned to be a leader in green industries. We talked about our desire to see CTE centers really match with the jobs of the future. And, right here in Maine, we have Habib Dagher, who's doing incredible work looking at offshore wind and other renewable industries. We have incredible internationally renowned experts who are leaders. Even here out at Brunswick Landing, we have folks looking at composites who will be able to create portions of, whether they're wind arrays or looking at high-tech, substructures for solar panels. And I always like to bring up, we have the potential to be a leader on solar. If you look at the amount of, space we have, we could definitely give Germany a run for its money on the potential amount of solar installations. But even more so, I think it's also a business issue. We need to be leaders in making sure that we're working with our businesses to make it easier for them to invest in renewable resources. We have Efficiency Maine, my own business. I have an electric brew house. They were a huge help to us in trying to figure out where we can make sustainable decisions. And I think, as you have to have a broad approach, but a very important one is making sure that we're partnering with our businesses and enabling them to make those investments in sustainable and green resources.
Thank you, Mattie. Brad.
So the question is, how do I feel about it? I don't believe that the climate is static. It always changes. Everything changes. The seasons change and things change. I think there is some disagreement about to what extent is this all man-made heat. And I don't frankly know. I don't take any side. I'm kind of agnostic about this because I don't know enough about it. It's not my specialty. But I'm in favor of clean energy, but the question is at what cost? So when somebody's struggling to heat their home in the wintertime with oil, and if you want to tax that oil and tack on an extra $100 for the delivery, that's going to hurt a lot of people. Out of total curiosity today, I looked up the world population. It's about 7.8 billion. Maine's population is 1.35 million. We are 1/58th of 1% of the world's population. So that means that we'd have to have 58 populations of Maine to get to 1% of the globe. So we could be the cleanest, best place in the world, and I still don't know what impact that would have when you got a country like China polluting this world with 4 times as many people as we have. So we just and I say that not that I'm not in favor of clean energy, but we have to look at the practical impact. So we look at our ability to make those changes versus how it's going to impact the people that live in Maine. I mean, that's what has to be the balance on the scales, in my opinion. One thing I haven't heard anybody talking about is tidal energy. And, growing up on the coast of Maine, in Cape Elizabeth and summering on Chebeague Island, I've seen we have almost 10-foot tidal differences. I mean, that is a massive amount of water that the earth is moving around for us every day. That seems like that's a place that could be harnessed. And I'm sure it's being done, but I'd like to learn more about that. So I'm probably getting close to the 2 minutes.
Oh, no, that's great. Thank you, Brad. Thank you. Holly.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, climate change is something that needs to be addressed now, and everybody needs to be engaged in it. And so I absolutely am one of those people who have been spending time understanding what I can do as well as what we can do on a larger basis. And I've had the pleasure of attending weekly webinars lately about the climate and a Maine Business initiative that's been put on by Maine Climate Table. And there are many Maine businesses that are actively engaged in being carbon neutral and working towards renewable energy. You know, I've heard people in aquaculture talking about how they can be more efficient in the growth of oysters. I've heard about dairy farmers and how they can recapture methane gas, you know, and then also automotive industry that is looking at doing things differently and being efficient. So I do believe that we have people here in Maine who are engaged in this topic. I don't know, the question I have is, how strategic are we? It seems like maybe there are pockets of this or that. What is our framework? What is, you know, I know Eloise had noted the, you know, the shorter and long-term goals about, you know, the 2030 goal, but, you know, so how are we moving that forward strategically is what I would want to be digging into, and how are we incentivizing people to be able to do that? And I don't think that adding taxes like 40 additional cents to home heating oil is the way to do that. That hits individuals that right now are struggling, and I don't support those bills that have been offered in the legislature. I also do believe that we have to start thinking now about how we're going to support those industries that come out of renewable energy. And right now, with the job creation that's been talking about, and the work that I know Eloise Vitelli has done, you know, where are we going to find those skilled people to do that? Because right now, a lot of places are having a hard time putting anybody in the door, let alone somebody who requires specific skills. So it's great to have those goals, but if we're not actively working on how we're actually going to accomplish it, then we're not going to see action take place.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you. I'm going to jump in there and I'm going to give everybody 30 seconds, and we're just going to go around in the same order. And if you don't want your time, you don't need to take it. But if you want it, Eloise, you have the first crack at it.
Well, let me just add in that I had the pleasure of chairing a committee that had a very long name, but it was all about energy storage, because as you all know, the wind and the rain and the sun are intermittent sources of energy. So to really make sure that they are cost effective and available to support our electricity needs, some kind of storage is going to be necessary. And there were several ideas that came out of the report that our task force came up with that I think are worth taking another look at. The pandemic sort of intervened in moving some of those ideas forward, but I'm looking forward to getting back to those so that we can make sure that that's part of Maine's strategy. That was another recommendation actually, is that we have a strategy. And I would look forward to the Maine Climate Council as an opportunity to see what's going to come out.
Thank you, Eloise. Mattie, your 30 seconds.
Absolutely. I was just going to throw in the Governor's Climate Council, which has a broad cross-section of professionals in a bunch of fields who will be coming back to the legislature with a broad set of recommendations to have that strategic plan. Also, the skills gap that Holly was talking about is something that my committee, the IDEA committee, was looking at, is how, you know, being able to find people for jobs is a very real crisis right now. And how do we make sure that we're attracting students? And it has to basically be a pipeline where we're encouraging them to think about these careers, you know, as early as elementary and junior high school. Also, I want to say I'm absolutely not in favor of a tax on heating oil. I think this goes for everyone who's on this call right now. You know, I just had to fill my tank, and I honestly can't even think about what size, you know, a tax would have done on that. So we need to, that's not the way to solve this. The way to solve this is to invest in other resources.
Thank you, Mattie. Thank you, Mattie. Sorry, guys. Brad, you're up.
Every decision on this issue and every other issue is a balancing. I think of like the scales of justice that when we practice law. You got to put the considerations on both sides. And I'm not going to be pro oil company just because they're going to maybe donate to a particular cause. But we have to look at what are the benefits of oil and petroleum in as far as, you know, when I'm driving around knocking on doors, I'm using my car. I mean, when we travel, we're using fuel. We have to be practical. I want the change, but I want it to be incremental so that we don't hurt people too much.
Thank you, Brad. Holly, final word.
Sure. And, the other thing that I think about as a consumer, and I think what Brad's talking about is having balance and the cost benefit analysis. And the one thing I still don't understand is what's going to happen to wind blades at the end of their life, and how are those going to be recycled? What is the impact of, besides the beauty of our coast, what is the impact of huge oil rig size windmills off the coast of Maine, and what does that do to our marine industry? And likewise, what are we going to do with all of these solar panels that have lithium and other toxic chemicals? Though, anytime we have an initiative to be more green, we have to look at the end result and what's going to happen at the end of this. And we don't have those answers, or at least I certainly have not been able to find those answers.
Awesome. Thank you, Holly. And thank you to all the candidates. I know it's not easy hitting these time markers, and I just want to make sure we can get through as much as we can. With that, I'm going to ask you to do something completely unfair, and we're going to talk about taxes. And I really need to hold you to the minute and a half, if at all possible on this, because we do have one other question I want to get to before closing statements. But that next question might be a lightning round. So taxes, property taxes. The question, I sent it to all of you earlier because it is a little bit complex, goes like this. One of the three primary tax buckets, income tax, sales tax, and property tax. Property tax is the most regressive and strikes the hardest on those that can least afford it. Please comment as to how you, by serving in the state legislature, might assist in alleviating this tax burden on local communities and counties, as they are property tax dependent. Some examples might be development of alternative funding sources, programs to encourage common service consolidations between local governments, lifting state requirements, more direct assistance. Again, all with the goal of alleviating property tax burden. We're going to go Mattie, Brad, Holly, Eloise.
Absolutely. So this is something that is near and dear to me because it's honestly one of the things I'm hearing the most about outside of the COVID pandemic, and the impact of property taxes on our residents here in Senate District 24 and throughout the entire state. We know they're the most regressive taxes. We've seen a shift over the past, 15 years, unfortunately, increasingly more, schools and municipal services relying on property taxes. One issue we've had is that municipal revenue sharing was sliced over the past 8 years. We've worked really hard in the last budget. We did do restoration for municipal revenue sharing, but it needs to go higher. We also need to be on a state level, committed to meeting our funding goal of 55%. Schools cost a certain amount, and we are looking at efficiencies. I know from everyone here who's either, worked with a school board or is on a school board, we're all working very hard to find cost savings where we can, but we shouldn't be forcing it entirely on our municipalities. We need to be a state and local partnership, which is something that, with my work on the education committee, I've strived to do that. Now, it's going to be very hard in the upcoming budget to really be able to make our revenues work, but we're going to have to be creative and really equalize our tax system. Right now, we need to do everything we can to avoid regressive taxes, because we can't, hardworking Mainers can't afford a tax hike right now, but we also have to make sure that we're not letting our infrastructure get left behind. So I've shown, my first year on the education committee, I had to creatively find a way to fund pre-K, and I found it through a tiny little line item in the casino aspects and the lottery. And that's exactly the same approach. I'm going to take it the same way I do with my business and find where we can find efficiencies, where we can save, but what the bottom line is making sure we're not increasing property taxes or hurting hardworking Mainers.
Awesome. Mattie, thank you. Brad, you're up.
I totally understand the concern here. Somebody that inherits a house that's generations old might have, especially where we live near the coast of Maine. I mean, prices are really, really high right now, and they may not have saved up the money to purchase that themselves and not be independently wealthy, but might have an asset that is substantial that they have a huge tax bill for that they can't afford because their incomes might be low. That seems to be, that's not equitable to me. I think all possibilities should be on the table. When people talk about the rich paying their fair share, there might be a poor guy that's got a nice place in Harpswell on the ocean that's paying a ton in taxes. I don't think that's the intent. We might want to look at some kind of a consumption tax, some kind of a tax on people that spend the most money for goods and services, because they're the ones that have the most money. Similarly, if you inherit a ton of money, which I never have, but it'd be nice. If you inherit money, that's not deemed income. So you're not paying an income tax on inherited money. The idea is that you want to tax people that have the means to be able to pay it, and keep taxes low on the people that don't have it. In both the property taxes and the income tax, they don't track each other necessarily. The sales tax does, but the sales tax also applies to all our basic needs. So the people that don't have a lot of money still have to get their groceries, buy their gas. They're going to be paying a sales tax no matter what, the same as anybody that's got a lot of money. So that too is a little bit inequitable. So I'm in favor of, just looking at the whole taxation system. Yeah.
Great. Holly.
Great. Brad, I think you make a good point about the relationship between property tax and also income tax. When thinking about property tax, the very first thing that comes to my mind is the commitment that the state of Maine has had to fund 55% of education, which does not happen. And that cost is shifted to the local taxpayer in the form of property taxes. And if you are in a small town, such as many of those in my Senate District 23, in some cases, almost 80% of your taxes could be going towards education. And that's a lot. So that's one thing that needs to be looked at. I do like Brad's thinking about also the impact of income tax as well. I know that I've been reading the Maine Center for Economic Policy's recent report, and I've attended their webinar. And I know there's a hope for a federal bailout to support our current economic crisis, but I don't know that is necessarily going to happen or make sense. And really, what's being looked at is have no cuts in the public sector and tax the wealthy. And that is concerning because, I know those models work in other states where you have multiple people or population that are making $1 million, but we don't have a lot of $1 million annual income earners here in the state of Maine.
Mm-hmm.
And so how are we going to define wealthy, and how many people need to be taxed how much to make up a $900 million deficit?
Thank you, Holly. Eloise.
So I share the experience of my colleagues here that I heard for years now from constituents throughout my district of the burden of property tax. And it's been said, but it particularly hits hard those who are on fixed incomes, whatever the value of their property. If they don't have the money to pay the tax, it's a burden that's unfair. And it's always also been said that the expense then goes back to the municipalities to make up the difference that the state is not contributing to the cost either of the municipal budgets or, as in most cases, of the education budget that the municipality supports. So I was really pleased that this last legislature was able to fulfill its commitment to reducing significantly the property tax burden by increasing the revenue sharing to towns. Now, we haven't made full progress yet, but we made some significant steps towards restoring revenue sharing. We also increased the homestead exemption program and the property tax fairness credit. So we were very focused on trying to provide some direct relief to the property taxpayers. We need to continue that, obviously. There's more work to be done, and as been stated, it is a balancing process. I spent 20 years on the Maine Economic Growth Council, and we had every year a conversation about Maine's tax burden. And we looked at all of the taxes that individuals and businesses pay in this state and tried to assess what the burden was for any category of person, taking into account all of the different taxes that people pay. And so that's the challenge as we think about making sure that we don't overburden the property tax, is to look at the way all of the taxes work together. My values in bringing to this issue, because I'm not a tax expert, are values of fairness and balance. And so however we come out with it, that's what I'll look for.
Awesome. Thank you, Eloise. Just a quick 30 seconds if you want anything more on that. We're going to go start with Mattie again.
Absolutely. I just think, we've all touched on the price of a house in our area. It's something that's really impacting my generation. I graduated in the last recession, and the average price of a single family home has shot up, over $50,000. So when you're looking at a property tax burden that makes it absolutely fiscally impossible, or also if you're inheriting a house that's on the water, you don't have the income to match. We should be stuck in a situation. We literally have a crisis of affordable housing, and, we need to be doing everything to set that back. So, we had some great services that we've, increased under this current budget, but we need to definitely do more, like Eloise was saying.
Thank you, Brad. 30 seconds.
All right, without getting too involved in economics, the idea of bailouts is anathema to me, because the federal government, if we're going to rely on them to bail us out, the federal government doesn't have the money. So what they do is they sell bonds, and by and large, the Federal Reserve just prints the money, or just credits the federal government. And hopes to get repaid someday. The reason I mention that is that inflation, which you can see it everywhere, is another form of a tax. It makes everything that you have in life more expensive. We have to be careful of that. It's another reason why balancing budgets and living within your means is so important.
Thank you, Brad. Holly.
I agree with what Brad said, and I'm not taking up more time because I'm ready for the next question.
There we go. Eloise.
Well, I just want to applaud what the administration has done in the legislature to make sure that going into this pandemic, our fiscal house was in good stead, and that in fact we still have reserves left in the general fund and in our rainy day savings fund.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, last question. It's a lightning round question. You've got 30 seconds. We will be having the contact information for all of our candidates. So if you want to follow up on this question or any question that wasn't asked, we can do that later. It is ranked choice voting. We're going to start with Eloise and then go to Holly, Mattie, and Brad. Do you support ranked choice voting for all political races? And will you protect ranked choice voting in the future? It is the lightning round. It is 30 seconds, and I will have to cut you off. Eloise, go for it.
Yes and yes. I have to say I was not a full fan in the beginning, but it's there now, and I found it not too hard to use, and yes, let's go for it.
Wonderful. I'm not sure, Brad. I think I was supposed to start with you, and I apologize for that. Mattie, go for it.
Absolutely. I definitely support ranked choice voting. The Maine people have spoken. We've used it on other elections. I just got my ballot today, so I'm really excited to use ranked choice voting on a couple of the races. And I'll continue to protect whatever the Maine people feel is the best way to have our elections run.
Beautiful. Thank you, Brad. Sorry again for not going first with you.
That's all right. I'm opposed to it. I don't think people go to the polls to say, I like this person the best. I like that one second. I like him third. I like her fourth. I think people have a favorite and they vote for the favorite. I also don't know why 50% is the threshold. It seems arbitrary. Why not 49? Why not 48, 47, 46? I don't know. There's a reason that plurality is mentioned in the Maine Constitution when electing a governor. It's because the person with the most votes should be the winner, period.
Awesome. And Holly.
I agree with Brad. I oppose RCV. I get a ton of questions about it. It's confusing to voters. People should not have to reference a government website to understand how their vote will be counted or whether their ballot will be thrown out. And it is costly to the taxpayer when we have to have runoffs.
Awesome. Holly, thank you. We're not going to go anything further on that question so we can get into closing arguments. I promised everyone we would be out by 1 o'clock. We might run a little bit over, but I do want to give everyone 90 seconds to 2 minutes for their closing statements. Since I did not start with Brad last time, I'm going to start with Brad this time. So we're going to go Brad, Holly, Eloise, Mattie, 90 seconds to 2 minutes for your closing statement. And then we will tell everybody how they can contact you.
Okay. Thanks again for the opportunity, Cory. I think I've proven myself over my life and then my career as a lawyer that I'm an effective advocate for people. I have a good track record. I have a background being principled and ethical. I did serve on the Maine Ethics Commission for 3.5 years. I welcome people to look at my reviews online for what I've done to help clients. I think I'm a good dad, a good husband. I've been married 17 years. We get along great. We make it happen. I live within my means. I pay my bills. I'm a productive member of society. I guess the fundamental thing I want people to take away is I am not a believer that the government is going to solve every single one of your problems in life. I think some of what I want to do is to prevent the government from getting involved and allow people to solve the problems the way they think they should be done. Everybody's an individual. Everybody's got different wants and needs. If one size doesn't fit all, and the person that should be deciding what's best are my constituents themselves.
Awesome. Brad, thank you so much. Holly.
Great. I've spent the last decade working in my community as a elected official, and I truly believe that it is important that we listen to our constituents and make sure that we have a balanced approach to problem solving. And right now, I'm concerned that we do not have a balanced approach in our government, and that is what has spurred me to run for state senate. I'm working every day to connect with voters, and I will continue to work hard on behalf of our community. I really want to have us foster economic growth and recovery, grow opportunities in career and technical education that will contribute to solving to our skilled labor shortage. And we need to continue to support our small businesses, which are the backbone of our Maine economy. So I am hopeful that with your vote, I will be able to represent your voice in Augusta as your senator.
Awesome. Holly, thank you. Eloise.
Thank you. When I started this campaign, and actually even the previous campaigns, I adopted the saying, we're all in this together. And that was based on my experience as the middle of 5 children growing up, where it was actually very much incumbent on each of us to contribute to our household and to the family, whether that was through doing chores or taking care of each other. So I grew up with that ethos of we're all in this together. We all can do our part to make things work, to make things better. This job is about problem solving for the people of the state. I think I've shown through my work in the legislature, and as I mentioned earlier, my experience in the workforce, that I know how to solve problems and I know how to get things done. And the way you do that, I think, is based on the kind of leadership style, if you will, that I've learned and been inspired from the entrepreneurs that I've worked with over many, many years. And so I'll offer you the 3 C's of leadership that I think I bring to this race. The first is compassion or caring. You have to really be able to care about something other than yourself, about the community, about the people. And I think all of us obviously have that, or we wouldn't be here today. The second C is curiosity, which I hearken back to some words of Eleanor Roosevelt, who talked about emotional curiosity, the ability to put yourself in other people's, literally, shoes, lives, to feel what other people feel. I think it also means being able to see the possibilities, to be able to ask questions. What if we do things this way? What if we try a different approach? I think that's going to be critical as we work towards recovering from this pandemic and its impact on our families and businesses. And then the final one is connection, because none of us can do this alone. We need to know how to connect with others, build networks, and work together.
Eloise, thank you. Mattie, closing statement.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Cory. Thank you to the Chamber for putting on this event. It's been wonderful to be here. Just in closing, I have devoted the last 8 years of my life to public service, and it's something I believe deeply in. I grew up in a family and community that values volunteerism and helping out all those around you. And I think I've proven over the last 8 years, you know, whether it's through my work in my legislative life or through my work with other organizations, that, you know, I'm a creative, compassionate, empathetic, and bipartisan leader. And I really think, you know, all of us have spoken about our commitment to our area. We are all so passionate about Maine and this area. We might not agree on how to get to the same goal, but we're all here because we want to make a difference. And I always sort of bring it back to my life as a bartender and brewing beer. I think of it, you know, if someone comes in, they could be having a great day or a bad day, and they sit down, and your role as a bartender is to make sure that, you know, they're heard, that they feel valued, that they have the best experience coming out of there. And I think that experience, you know, really, you know, prepares me for public life, and it's prepared me, you know, while I've been a legislator. You have to put aside what your own needs are and make sure when they come in the door that they leave having the best day possible. And that's kind of how I view state government. We don't know what everyone's going through. You have to keep your ears open. You have to connect with your community. community members, but you want to make sure at the end of the day, you know, you work hard, you find a compromise, and everyone walks out with a smile. So I really hope I get the chance to be your next state senator, and I'm really looking forward for all of us, no matter what our roles are, to rolling our sleeves up and getting us out. Thank you.
Awesome. Mattie, thank you. I do want to thank our guests. One last parting thing before we go. I'm just going to rapid fire in the same order. If people have more questions about you as a candidate and need to contact you, Brad, what is the best way for people to reach you or connect with you? I need you to unmute. There we go.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, to look at my webpage for the state senate, it's bradpattershall.com. I've got a Facebook page as well, and the best way to contact me is at my office. My email is brad@law207.com, or they can call me, 373-9309.
Beautiful. Holly, best way to get
Great.
contacted.
Yeah, Holly J.P. Kopp @gmail.com. You can give me a call at 751-2847. Visit my Facebook page, Kopp for Senate, or check out my website, hollykoppformainesenate.com.
Holly, thank you. Eloise, best way to contact you.
Same thing, only different letters. So my website is eloisevitelli.com. I have the Facebook page. I can be reached by email at eloise.vitelli@gmail.com, or by calling my home phone number at 443-4660.
Wonderful. And Mattie, best way to contact you.
So my website is mattiedaughtry.com. I'm also on Facebook under Mattie for Maine. You can also reach me on my email, which is Mattie4, spelled out F-O-R, senate@gmail.com, as well as my number, which is 370-9871. Also, if you see me slinging beer out in front of moderation with 4-packs, please feel free to stop by. And
Thank you, Mattie. I do want to say the only shame is that we only have 2 seats. We have 4 incredible candidates. And I want to thank you all for joining us. And I want to thank everyone else who popped in to listen and submit questions. So thank you, everybody. And
Thank you.
this video will be on the Chamber Facebook page. Share it with the world so people can get to meet our candidates. Thank you all so much.
thank you,
Thanks,
Cory.
Cory.
All right.
Thanks, Cory.